So I was going to make a reference to the old 80s movie My Science Project. Then I realized most of you probably have no idea what that is. Even people as old as me probably don't know what that is. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with an old book review today, doing the old-fashioned thing. You know, Mike's Book Reviews doing a book review. How about that, guys? And today, it is the newly released The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey. This is Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank. Their powers combined make James S.A. Corey. Now, this is something that I was very, very excited about. This is book one of the Captives War trilogy. This is their follow-up to The Expanse. So big shoes to fill. Obviously, I love The Expanse. And I said anything that they made after that, I was going to read, and the time has come, guys. Came out like 2 weeks ago. I was actually approved for a digital arc by NetGalley. That's what I read off of for the beginning. Orbit never really approved me for one, but hey, NetGalley did, so that works for me. But yeah, my expectations were very high for this. So the question is, did it meet them? Well, we're going to get into it like usual by beginning with what is this book about. Now, the Carryx, part Empire, part Hive, have waged wars of conquest for centuries, destroying or enslaving species across the galaxy. Now, they are facing a great and deathless enemy, and the key to their survival may rest with humanity. Then the Carryx ships descend, decimating the human population and taking the best and brightest of society away to serve on the Carryx homeworld. They are dropped in the middle of a struggle they barely understand, set in a competition against the other captive species, with extinction as the price of failure, and only a handful of companions see past a Darwinian contest of the deeper game that they must play to survive, learning to understand and manipulate the Carryx themselves. With a noble but suicidal human rebellion on one hand and strange and murderous enemies on the other, the team pays a terrible price to become the trusted servants of their new rulers. Guys, takes us into book one of the Captives of War. This is The Mercy of Gods. I gotta give them a shout out because at the beginning of this, they do a dedication to the late great Frank Herbert, and obviously Dune being my favorite book of all time, that was something that I did appreciate quite a bit. Now I know they did say that they also shout out Ursula Le Guin. I haven't read her, so I can't say very much about that. And now the comments will be about why are you doing this? Why are you not reading Ursula Le Guin? It'll happen eventually. So let's get into, guys, what makes it good or bad. Let's begin with the good. There are some good things here. I gotta say the Carryx are incredibly fresh or unique. When you start dealing with aliens, it just seems like everyone just kind of falls back into the same lazy patterns of aliens. I felt like this was pretty original, not just your little X-Files, little gray humanoids, which I love X-Files, but let's not bring that up. But I'm not going to spoil the description for you here. I'm just going to say I thought that it was really, really well done. And it was really, I was just like, man, I need to see some artwork of this because this sounds really, really damn cool. But they're terrifying and they're very, very original. I'm going to give big credit to that because sometimes where I felt like they were just like so OP, like even, they just kind of almost looked at like even like a human mob, like it is insignificant. Like it's not even worth their time to be upset and be oppressive about it because it's just like, whatever. They're just, little bugs, But I think that the invasion was incredibly entertaining. I really did enjoy that part. Now, look, you've read any of these sci-fi books. You've seen alien invasion done a few dozen times at least, right? But I do feel like this one really was done well. I love how it kind of starts with like confusion and then a little bit of, there's a rational explanation for what's going on into like, well, we're going to be okay, right? This is just like a thing, but we're going to be okay. And then kind of like it just shows how insignificant the resistance efforts really were as a whole because, it doesn't last very long. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, this invasion is just like brutal because it's so quick and decisive. And it's a pretty terrifying scene with how they kind of thin the herd. Let's put it that way. It really doesn't really pull any punches in that regard. And it is really vicious. And again, you can see they're just looking at this as like a means to an end. And they don't really, I guess they need humanity, which you're going to find out about. But, they're really just so far advanced over humanity. It's just like this ridiculous how helpless our human characters are here. But the way it shows the Carryx, kind of their superiority over their captors. Again, there are many people who try to, do like a quick little rebellion or let's rush the guard kind of thing. And they just don't care. They really just do not care. They know you're in this and you're not getting out of it. And there's nothing that you really can do. Resistance is futile, as one famous android might have said. But I just love that it just has this, they're treated with indifference, really. And it's just indifference about the humans. I can't get over that feeling of just like it's helplessness of our human characters being like, dude, they just don't even care about us. That's how much they consider us a threat. They don't like anything else probably in the galaxy be a bigger threat than we are. I gotta say the Swarm Learn more about the swarm as it goes on. But the swarm is probably the most compelling thing for me. It had the kind of the mystery of what exactly is this? How is this affecting these characters? And what is overall does it mean? Is this like the great big voice? Is this like the hive mind? What is this? And you'll be asking that question for a bit. And that's probably the thing I found the most compelling, especially in the early going when this book does have kind of a slow start, which we'll get to in a minute. But that was one of the things that really had me interested during some of those slower parts. And I wanted to know more. And it was really good. But I like that the back history, I love the way it's kind of told through like maybe some ancient text or journals or scribes and maybe some flashbacks. It just kind of makes the world feel bigger. And I do think that they did a really good job building up this world. They don't skimp on any of the details. They painstakingly so. They stick to the details on everything that's going on the page. And to me, there are some things that get sacrificed, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But as far as like the world building goes, and just this technology and this species, it's really well done. It's very, very well done. I'd definitely say it's the strength of this book. I like that stuff quite a bit. So what did I not like? Now, I kind of changed the name of this category because I always say, well, I wouldn't necessarily call it bad. These are some things that didn't work for me, and I think maybe if they work for you, then hey, don't worry about it. I think this may be a book you want to check out. But there are some things that really I struggle with in this book, and the first thing being the character work is incredibly lacking, and that really devastated me because The Expanse had incredible character work. It was the strength of that series, I thought. I think it did all these things as well, too. And I know that that's an unfair bar because The Expanse is beloved by millions and millions of people. But this had so many characters that I felt like could have been combined or just weeded out completely. Is like this story didn't need this many characters to tell the story that it was telling. And at first I thought, okay, well, this is just going to be because they're going to pare them down. They're obviously not all going to live. Well, most of them do. Most of them do, and most of them are here, and most of them are indistinguishable from the other. And that's really, really a bummer. And I mean, honestly, these characters were such a blank slate. Like, who like the main three really are, but then all some of these side characters, I had to keep flipping back to earlier in the book to try to even remember who they were. And I felt like that was unexpected because this has a long enough page count. This has a slow enough pace where I feel like you could have really developed those characters and really differentiated them much more than you did with what you were given. But they didn't. They really didn't. And that was just they just all fell flat for me. And that just, I don't know, I didn't feel like they were reacting like real people would react. Like, it's the episode of Seinfeld where he's telling a joke and the girl just says, that's funny, and she doesn't actually laugh. That's how I felt like the characters were like, they felt like they were going insane, but they don't act in any way like they were going insane or even reacting to this very stressful situation anyway, except, well, you've got a job to do. And it just, I don't know, it felt very robotic. And I didn't feel like these characters really had anything that you could relate to them on at all. You would think you would feel really bad for these characters in the situation. And I felt nothing. I felt like you could have replaced the whole cast with new characters and have been like, on to the next one, But yeah, and it's a character first reader. That made this book really, really tough to get through in some spots because the pacing was a drag. I'm not even kidding. The first 60 pages are literally just scientists trying to get grants to fund the research. That's really what it is. And I'm fine with you establishing that this is just kind of the doldrums of everyday life, and then boom, the invasion happens, and you just see, okay, everything you thought was a problem before that don't matter anymore. It never mattered. It was just the insignificant things that you just complain about in your daily life, and then you realize, wow, maybe those things weren't so bad. So I have no problems with that, but it was tough. And the thing is every time I started to pick up, it would drag some more. It's so many lulls in this book where I'm just like, wow, this chapter is really long. And I don't really do that in anything in The Expanse. I know it's unfair. I'll get to that. I know it's unfair to compare it to The Expanse. It's inevitable. It was going to happen, obviously. But it feels like it's a 250-page story that they stretched to almost 500 pages. And it didn't need this much. I think if you were going to do a book really more on the ideas and world building, you need to have one hell of an idea to have this length. And I didn't feel like this was it. This wasn't the idea that had me being like, I want to know more about this idea, about this universe. No, I wanted to kept going back to the characters. I want to feel the characters struggle more. Outside of Dafydd, I didn't give a damn about any of these characters, and even Dafydd could have died, and I'd been like, okay, well, let's see what happens next. How about why you guys should read it? Maybe you guys do want to read it. I say if you liked their work in The Expanse, it's got to be, you got to be curious at this point, right? If you really like The Expanse, you have to be like me, and you had to be excited and curious about what comes next. So these two tagging together, it seems like they found a very successful formula. And if that's something you're interested in, hey, check it out. But if you prefer ideas and world building, I know a lot of sci-fi readers versus fantasy readers are like this. You enjoy the idea. You enjoy the world building. You enjoy the technology. You enjoy the science of it all. you enjoy that more than the character work, then this is going to be a book that's your jam. I mean, you're going to love that. Me being more of a fantasy reader than a sci-fi reader, I lean much more on the characters than I do the idea. But if you want kind of like a new spin on the alien invasion story, I feel like it could have been really lazy and just done something that, that everybody's been doing all the way since Arthur C. Clarke. I feel like they did a pretty good job with it. They did a pretty neat idea of making some things fresh and making it not feel like the same old story you've heard a dozen times and giving some new ideas. I did really appreciate that, and I think you would too. And if you kind of like the science experiment type of book, comparison I made is I feel similarly to this as how I felt The Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which very talented author, not taking anything away from him. That book wasn't really for me. It was very much like I was reading someone's biology experience about spiders. That's what I really felt like. Reading the research paper. There's a lot of that in this. If you really just want to stand there and listen to a group collaborate on their ideas about how to get to this, make sure this hypothesis works, I think this would be something for you. For me, yeah, not so much. But I think that if you are into those type of things, if you like Tchaikovsky, I think that you'll probably like this quite a bit. As for my final thoughts, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, guys. This will be on my biggest disappointments list at the end of the year. And that's not to say it was bad, as much as it was just a big-time letdown. I understand I set the expectations way too hard after the Expanse. It's just not fair to compare to The Expanse, which I consider like an all-time classic in sci-fi. And I haven't read as much as you probably, so you might be shaking your head at that. I loved The Expanse. I loved that crew. I loved all the characters. I either loved to hate them or hated to love them. I loved everyone in that story. I thought everyone had a place. Here, characters just felt so flat to me. And this is why I don't do as much sci-fi as I do fantasy and horror, because I feel like there's not as much going on about what's making these people tick, what's going on inside their heads. I don't feel like we really get inside any of these characters' heads quite the way that I want to. So if if I don't care about your characters, I'm usually not going to care too much about your idea or your world unless it's a really banging idea. And like I said, I didn't think that this was it. I liked it, didn't love it. I needed some more character work to kind of balance those things out. For me, guys, this book felt like hundreds of pages of standing at a table while a bunch of students that you don't know work on a science experiment, because I just felt like I didn't know these characters at all. That's what I felt like. I was just observing a bunch of people I didn't know in class, never got to know them, and they were doing their science experiment, and I'm just kind of over there minding my own business. So I don't think I'll be continuing with book 2, and that's really depressing, because I was very excited about this. It was one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and some of that might be me. I might have been expecting too much. But other parts of it was like, look, I like what I like. I like character development over everything else, and this didn't have it for me. And the good news is, guys, is I seem to be an island with this. Most people seem to like it. I think it's rocking like 4.5 stars on Goodreads right now. Most people seem happy with it. So I always say, don't let me deter you. Don't let me bring you down. If I want you to read it and make up your own mind. Don't take my word for it, please. I always say, especially when it comes to sci-fi, because I'm not well versed in it like a lot of you are. But as always, like I said, I encourage you to pick it up and check it out for yourself, because, I'm always on the hunt for the kind of sci-fi that I'm looking for. But this kind of leans more in like the 3-body range than it does in like the Sun Eater range, where, I get to know those characters and stuff, whereas in 3-body, it's like, it's a very good idea. I wish I cared about these characters. Very similar in that regard. So, guys, what did you think about The Mercy of Gods? Have you read it? Why don't you go ahead and drop in the comments. Tell me why I'm wrong. That's fine. Go ahead. Tell me why I'm wrong. I've been told a lot already on Twitter. One person told me that they can't believe that Dune is my favorite book of all time if I didn't like this, even though I see absolutely no similarity to Dune outside of them mentioning Frank Herbert at the beginning. But, again, these are the things that, we don't have to agree on all these things. It's cool. Differences of opinion will always be welcome here. So I want you guys to drop in the comments. Let me know what you thought about The Mercy of Gods, and I will talk to you there.